Hi, everyone. Oh man, we have a low attendance today. I hope a few more people show up. But either way, I will be happy and excited to get to spend some time with you guys. I'll just wait one more minute. Okay, so week 8. We are coming up into the midst of summer. It's the middle of summer. Um, Jeremiah, did you get your haircut or has it always been like that?
Yeah, I cut it. I didn't really trim my beard much, but I did shave my head.
Okay, awesome. I shaved my head too.
Yeah,
There you
it
go.
feels so good.
It feels so good. Okay, good. Some people are joining us. Great. Oh my gosh. So good to see everyone today. We're in week 8, and so we're getting to be in the middle of summer, and so things are starting to get really hard, partially because it's so hot outside and it's just really hot and it's hard to concentrate and hard to work, and there's lots of distractions. Um, Lots of fun things to do outside, vacation, seeing family, things like that. So this is a really hard time of year. Be kind to yourself. Just do what you can. Um, but let's get started for today, at least. Oh, so let me set up the screen share. So, yeah, summer 2020. Who knew? We're here. Okay, so I did this yoga video this morning. It's called Yoga with Adriene, and I'm actually starting a new 30-day yoga challenge called Yoga Camp. So it kind of made me smile because it reminded me of this boot camp because it's yoga camp. But also, I wanted to share this with you. I linked to the video here in this file. So if you're interested in doing the yoga video today or tomorrow, I highly recommend it. It was just really healing for me today. And so, hold on a second. So, the mantra for today's practice, today's yoga practice was, I accept where I'm at today. And so I just wanted to remind everyone of this. I know that things are really hard right now, and just remember that, yeah, just accept where you're at today. And then another thing that I wanted to emphasize to everyone is I'm really encouraging everyone to do this academic publication, um, because I want you to get your work out there. I know that your work is valuable, and I think it's worth it to put in some time and effort into making sure that the world can see and know your work. And publication is the best way to do that because you can get it online and people will be able to access it and read your work beyond just a dissertation. When you write your dissertation, of course, people can access it online, but this is an extra little way to get your work out there. However, I do want to emphasize that it's not the be all end all. Academic publication is only one genre of writing. It's one very specific form. And I myself am a poster child for leaving academia. And yes, I have published a lot of articles. And in fact, I just got a I got a revise and resubmit from a really good journal yesterday. So I'm going to be publishing another article soon. Now, I had a lot of revisions. This is actually the second round of revisions already. I got a lot more revisions. I've got a lot of work to do. It's due in October, so I've got some time. But so I'm still publishing in academic publications. But that being said, I've basically left academia and I'm really happy. And I do want to just remind everyone that academia is not, it's it's not necessarily the ideal place to be. And if you find yourself really struggling and really, maybe not struggling is not the right word, like we all struggle, but if you find yourself like extremely resistant to some of this and just feeling like this isn't what you want to do with your life, like that's okay. And it's okay to leave academia. It's okay to not publish in academia. And yeah, as long as you are getting your work out there and you're happy, then I'm happy. Just keep that in mind. It's okay. I want to make sure you guys know that I'm not like preaching the gospel of academia because I do not believe in it. I publish in academia, but it's not the be all end all. Okay, so week 7 review, analyzing your evidence. What did we do last week? The main goal was to think about what the evidence tells you and how you can best explain it. We did a very important practice, which was highlighting evidence in green and highlighting analysis in blue. It seems like a silly thing to do at first. It's like, why do I have to do this? Which actually is a really good question. We are doing that to gain more awareness of our writing and gain more awareness of how our article is up to this point in terms of description versus analysis. That's the main thing when I'm reading through papers and I'm not seeing an argument. It's usually because there's a lot of description and not enough analysis. That's probably the main problem that I see when I'm reading over papers for the graduate students, is that it needs to go one step deeper in terms of explaining why it's important. And when you can answer the question, why is this important? Generally, you're going to hit on your argument, you're going to hit on your analysis. Oftentimes, we see the data as self-evident or self-explanatory. We expect the reader to be able to interpret it. Because we are so buried in our own research, it seems really obvious to us, but for the reader, it is not. Remember that when you publish in an academic journal article, your audience is not your advisor. Your audience is not your committee. Your audience is everyone in your general field. And so you want to make it very explicit what your evidence is saying. It is not self-explanatory. You can't take it to be self-explanatory or implicit. You have to be explicit about it. And so the task was just to evaluate, okay, what do you have? The task for this week is to actually revise the article. So there's actually not a lot of instruction for this week. This week is the least amount of actual class instruction in terms of the PowerPoint and also in terms of Wendy Belcher's advice. Why? Partially because we did a lot of that last week. So if you didn't get a chance to do any of these activities, I would spend this week doing that. It's worthwhile. Why? Because then you can move on to this week's tasks, which is to revise what you have in terms of your evidence. And one of the pieces of advice that Wendy Belcher does have right at the beginning is, I thought it was a really interesting insight, which is that, so she said, she calls SciQua, that's her abbreviation for the hard sciences, basically, and quantitative methods. And then HumInt is humanities and interpretive social sciences. And she separates this week into these two different categories because they are so different when it comes to evidence. And she suggests that if you're in the humanities or the social sciences, think about looking into the PsyQual section. What do they do, and how could you learn from them, learn from how they present their evidence to maybe make your study even more rigorous? And she says the same for the others. She says, anyone in the humanities, any humanities scholar would never take any text for granted. All humanities scholars will take every text that they are analyzing and really analyze the subtleties of every word, the subtleties of the word order, and never expect the reader to interpret that text for them. The humanities really go in depth into that analysis of every single line. So she says, well, the science and the quantitative could learn from that too. Never take anything for granted. You want to analyze every step of the way, and those subtleties that don't assume that your reader just knows what they are. Really unpack them and consider all the different angles. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to escape out of this PowerPoint, and we are going to actually take a look at what Wendy Belcher has for us this week, because I just want to go through it with everyone. So if you have the book, we're on page 244. So what she does, this is on, she explains that there's kind of two ways to do this. You can either start with revising your article and then do the checklist. I'm about to go over the checklist right now. Or you can start with the checklist and then revise your evidence. So let's go over the checklist right now. So this is for the scientific, so hard sciences and quantitative methods, basically. These are some things to consider when revising your methods section. She goes through everything that you could think of. Your sample, your measurement, your research context, your variables, your statistics. Watch repetition. Keep it short. This is all stuff that humanities and interpretive social sciences can also look at their methods section and think about that a little bit more. And she suggests this, even if you're in the humanities, you do want to discuss how and why you chose the text that you chose. Yeah, you might be doing textual analysis or literary criticism, but why did you choose that particular piece? So revising your PsyQual results. So she breaks it up into methods, results, and then discussion. So you have the separate section. If you're in the science and the quantitative, you have the separate section where you are describing your results. I like this one. Be choosy. Any study has more results than can be presented in one article. Don't use the results section as a data dump. Present only those results that relate to your argument or hypothesis. This is so applicable to the humanities and the social sciences as well. If you're analyzing interviews, don't give us the whole interview. You want to give us the most important points. So basically, this is all really good advice, and you just want to go through. And if it's not applicable, it's not applicable, and then you check that. But at least go through and read all of these elements that could potentially be a part of your evidence. Okay, she's got a lot of advice. And then how do you do discussion? Reiterate your findings and hypothesis here in no more than 2 sentences. List some implications, claim your significance. This is stuff we've already talked about. Question the findings. This is a really strong way to make your argument super strong. Evaluate the evidence for your hypothesis. What degree of certainty does the evidence enable? I know you guys all know this, but the helpful thing is to have this written out in a checklist form so you can go through. Maybe you're like, yeah, duh, already did that, already talked about degree of certainty, no problem. Done. Boom. Then you're good. But some of these things you might not have thought of. So she mentions this. Discuss the results, don't repeat them. Since the discussion depends on the results, it can be tough to keep them separate, but do what you can not to list the results in your discussion section. This is the point of that highlighting in green and blue activity that we did, so that you're not repeating. Okay, so this is a really long checklist, so we don't need to go over all of it right now. This is something that you can do on your own. But that's why I'm kind of just going over it so you can see. This is in the scanned PDF that I sent last week 8, to the email. Now, what about the humanities? So this is a little bit more brief, but you can use the science and the quantitative section as well. Quote meaningfully. Don't pack your article with dozens of quotations from your primary or secondary sources. You are to interpret them, not replicate them. Be selective. Don't quote when you can paraphrase. Don't quote material irrelevant to your argument, and don't quote at length unless your argument fails without that quotation. This is really useful. I fall into this trap a lot where I'm quoting my interviews way too much, or I'm quoting my field notes too much. This is another good one. Deploy theory, don't replicate it. Classroom essays often bog down in presenting theory rather than deploying it. Don't spend long sections of your article explaining feminist theory, for instance. Rather, make a feminist analysis of your primary source. At the same time, do make sure to mention what theory or approach you are using. By the way, if any of this stuff, if you have questions about any of this stuff, feel free to put it in the chat. Again, don't give too much evidence. Same with the last one. It's tempting to include everything in your article that you found. However, this is a mistake. Same with Sci-Qua. So this is a long list. This is a lot. I think it's all really useful, but there's a lot of things here. That's why there's nothing else. There's nothing else to really talk about this week, because this is going to take at least a week of looking at your evidence and really sitting down and being very careful about whether or not you've included or not included these elements of the checklist. So we will have, I saw the chat was going off. We will have time to do questions. I do just want to clarify the assignment for this week. So for this week, you have two options, and it's totally up to you. It's totally a personal preference, and just think about what you think would be better for you, because that checklist that I just showed you is a little bit overwhelming. You're going to need to go back and read all of those things. It's only a few pages, but it's a lot of stuff. And for some people, I know for me, when I first saw that checklist, I was really overwhelmed. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is like way too much. And so it helped me to first revise my article using last week's work, and then use at the end of the week, use the checklist to check this week's revisions. So in other words, kind of doing your revision tasks first and then kind of checking the boxes off. And then I would go back to on day 5, I went back to the article and did a few things that I had forgotten. Or you could start with the checklist today or tomorrow and clarify how you need to revise your presentation of evidence and then revise your article. So if you're like, no, I want to know like what I'm doing first, then you'll want to start with the checklist if you're not feeling too overwhelmed. And that's it. That's it for this week. So I'd love to hear your questions, and we can do maybe some more round robin with people on how things are going, and if they have questions specifically about, because this week depends on building off of last week. So if you still have questions about last week, we can also talk about that. So this is the same advice, except I added one new thing, which is this part right here. Are you still, after doing all of these things, are you still feeling stuck? If you are feeling stuck, take some time away. Take some time away from the article. Take some time away from your work. Take some time away from school in general. Take some time off. Take some time for self-care. And if you like really take time off to do some other things, you'll come back refreshed and energized and ready to work again. So if you're really feeling stuck, I mean, really take like a week off. You can come back to this week later. If you really need to, just take the whole week off with an intention to get back into it later. But don't be like, oh, I kind of need time off, but I'm not really going to give myself time, like real time off. Like really, really, don't open it for like a week. See what happens. Report back to me. So again, if you are having trouble getting motivated, myself and other graduate students are filling out these progress report forms. There's only a few of us left doing it, I think, because it's the middle of the summer and everyone's just like totally checked out, which is also fair. But there's still a few of us that do these progress reports at least once a week and give ourselves some good feedback at least once a week. So please do, if you're feeling unmotivated, but you do want to work on your article, check out these 2 links. It can be really helpful. For me, I am, it's just hard to get motivated like it is for anybody else. But knowing that I have Tuesdays and Thursdays, and today I didn't do it. Today I was way too tired. I was way too overwhelmed with a million other things going on in my personal and professional life. I didn't do it today, but I did do it on Tuesday. And it does really help knowing that people are out there also working and keeping track a little bit of what you're doing. So it can be really helpful to put into this spreadsheet exactly what you're working on and being held accountable to your peers. Remember, the next writing retreat is August 10th through the 13th. Here's the link to register. So this up here is a link to the event, and that's where you're going to get your Zoom link info and all the details. This is the registration link, and register by August 3rd to get started with that. Basically what it is it's every morning at 9 a.m. We changed it to 9 a.m. by the way. We meet on Zoom, and it's a way to just dedicate your whole week to writing, really clear your calendar, make this a priority, and have a community of students that are working and writing with you. And we have lessons every morning at 9 a.m. And we have a writing consultant. So if you register by Monday, August 3rd, I'll send out the list to sign up for the writing consultant on Tuesday. And you can meet with our writing consultant, and she'll read over your stuff and give you feedback. So it's a really good way to be like, you know what? Yeah, this summer hasn't been as productive as I wanted. The fall semester is about to start. Let me get a week of writing in before the fall semester starts. So some further advice. These are two links to websites that offer alternatives to academia. So if you're like, this academic thing is not for me, these are two sites. CU Boulder subscribes to both of these sites, so you can join for free. And if you have any questions about them, just let me know. But these are two websites where they really help you think about and network with employers for PhDs who are outside of academia. So if you're thinking about, leaving academia, check these websites out. All right, let's do questions. I'm gonna check the chat first. Okay, Jeremiah, you're so funny. Yeah, so this is what was that the discussion, right? That she said that? Yeah, in the discussion. So what she means is to like repeat your hypothesis again and then discuss your findings again. And then like you need to move on to the higher level analysis of like, what does this mean for my argument at this point? Like you've already presented the findings, like you're still like analyzing the findings, but you're not describing them anymore at that point. Okay, I'm reading Joe's question now, which I can tell is already a good one.
Sorry for the length. But
I love it. Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good question. I had the same question when I was writing my dissertation because everyone was like, you're too repetitive. And I was like, I'm trying to analyze it. I'm trying to analyze it. And they were just like, you're repeating yourself. So this is a great question. So basically what I was taught, and I think it was good advice, is as you guys know, as some of you might have known, I like spent my entire graduate school career in the graduate writing support. So they helped me a lot. So basically what they told me was really get into the subtleties and the nuances of the exact. So you're looking at an artist. Yeah. The subtleties and the nuances of the exact artist, the text, the quote, of that particular piece of evidence.
Okay.
And there might be some repetition, and there might be some tangential information that's not directly related to your argument. So I'll give an example that I remember specifically from an instance when I was told, you gotta analyze more. So there was this quote from this woman, and she was saying that she had to hide in a hotel because she was scared of the police. And, my main argument was that minorities suffer under state oppression and police violence. So, like, my analysis was basically that. And the writing consultant was like, you need to go deeper. And I was like, but I don't know. And she was like, so talk about homelessness. Like, this woman is experiencing temporary homelessness because she has to hide in a hotel. And my argument was not really about homelessness, but I was able to talk a little bit more, delve a little bit deeper into that exact quote about homelessness, and then link that to state oppression and police violence. So yeah. And absolutely, like, about the whole thing about theorists too, setting them into dialogue, right? That's a big part of our work as scholars, is to set this work in dialogue with the artists or the theorists or the scientists that came before. And that's one way to avoid repetition, actually, is to be like, hey, look, this is linking to what this other person did. But then, like, the next artist or the next quote, you can link to another artist or another theorist.
Do you
So,
think it would be helpful if I explained like how it's iterating each time? Because so like Renee Green, the artist I'm writing about, talks about Homi Bhabha, and Homi Bhabha is very into repetition and iteration, and that's where his
okay,
postmodern discourse comes out
gotcha.
of.
Yeah,
And they know each other. They're like friends. They talk to
yeah.
each other, you know. So like I guess I just didn't realize in the lit review I was so like high level and not diving into the texts that my committee was like, you're repeating yourself. And I'm
Mm,
like, I was kind of trying to model something about Homi Bhabha's
mm,
approach, and I think that wasn't the place to do it. The place to do it is
mm,
in the chapters where I'm doing, because they're just like, just go into the close reading and let the theory come in because you know the theory. Like you
mm-hmm,
don't have to prove to us that you know it.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And that was really helpful because it was getting so front loaded with
mm-hmm,
theory and like heavy, like the yeah.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
uh,
That's really good advice.
thanks.
Yeah, I experienced something very similar too, where it's like you're reading, and it's so true with postmodern stuff. So for those of you that don't know, this postmodern era, these theorists and these scholars, they write in such a way to reflect their ideas of nonlinear thought, basically. And it's so hard to read. But yeah, you're right. Like, we are still junior scholars and we're not quite there yet to like replicate that style exactly. I think clarity trumps it at that point. But I think you could maybe make a note too and be like, this is an important part of my style, is to like reflect some of these thoughts in my language. So, okay, so I wanted to check in with everyone about last week. So, how did last week go? We just have a few people on the call today, so maybe we can get some insight from everyone. How did last week go in terms of how, productivity and time management, and in terms of this analyzing your evidence activity that we did, where you highlighted sentences in blue and green? I'm just gonna, if it's okay with you guys, I'm just gonna like call people out, and if you don't have anything to say, that's totally fine. Lucia, can I call you out? Were you able to do the activity last week?
Like last week, I couldn't attend because I had a meeting with my department. So
Okay. Okay, that's good. Did you email me and ask me for the video? No, you emailed me and told me you weren't going to make it. Or we talked about it maybe.
I'm just waiting. When you send it, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, cool. So, so what we did do last week, and you can, this is not to call you out or anything like that, but just, in the future, you can read the Belcher stuff on your own, and you can look at the PowerPoint as well. I think those things are even more useful than the video.
Okay.
And so that's just a way to keep moving forward here. I might not have time to do the videos today, but I should have time to maybe do them tomorrow, so we can get them up.
And I'm also like reading the chapters with AJ, so we are kind of like talking about it every week, and yeah.
Okay, cool. That's great. Okay. Well, in that case, Ajay, would you like to share how things are going?
How things are going. Okay, so I'm still in the getting my data phase. So apparently it's never enough. Every time I get some new data and I have new ideas, and I tell my advisor, hey, I found something new. And then they're like, okay, let's include that in the journal article too. So, but other than that, my conference paper is pretty much ready. So the paper in itself is pretty much ready, but I just need to maybe change a couple of commas here and there. But yeah, mainly I need to add new data. So that's what I'm working on. But other than that, yeah, at least it's just keeping me accountable. So otherwise, if you have an open-ended summer, like 2 months pass and somehow you have accomplished nothing.
Oh yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, so I'm really glad I'm like, I have to keep Lucy accountable. So I have to read the textbook and yeah. So I mean, at least it's keeping things on track.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, so, as you're going through collecting the evidence, analyzing the data, think about how you're going to write it all down. You do have a pretty good start to your paper. As I've seen, it's in like almost final draft format, but still check out Belcher's checklist, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because you can always improve on what you have.
Exactly. Like my paper has already been through like 7 or 8 revisions by my advisor. So yeah, I mean, it's nearly done. So I just need to change a couple of things here and there and add more things.
Okay.
So yeah, I should stop suggesting new ideas to my advisor.
Yeah.
And then just submit this.
Yeah, I would say so. I would suggest that, like, that's one of Belcher's pieces of advice as well, is to like just stop collecting data or stop collecting evidence at a certain point.
Yeah, it's never enough.
It's never enough. That's so true. Yeah. Mary, I see you turned your video off. Did you want to share how things are going and how last week went in terms of the evidence that you have? Like, were you able to do the highlighting activity?
So I am at a different stage right now in writing. So last week I was mainly focused on finalizing a draft of a paper and sending it out to my advisor. And right now I'm starting from the very beginning in the argument phase and abstract in a new paper.
Yeah.
But I mean, I listened to what you were saying last time, and I felt roughly very comfortable with the amount of data to analysis that I had, but I didn't actually like highlight and everything. But
Okay.
I think for this paper, when I get to this point, I think that I would need to do that, because I think I already now see that I need more data to offer examples to the point that I
Okay.
would like to get through. So yeah, I think I will be a little bit behind in doing this.
Okay, no worries, right? Because we have time. Like you can always kind of catch up from last week,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then like come back to this chapter later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a good amount, but you'd like to add more examples.
Yeah, for this paper that I have,
Yeah.
I feel like I am making my point in a very like I feel like I am offering some data, but then for the point I'm making to like the importance of this data or the impact of this data, I think leaving a lot for imagination.
For
So
interpretation.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I think I would like to compile more like you could say it's a data processing result. You could say it's like that to really convey my point through and not make the readers imagine what it is like the point that or the impact that I would like to convey. I don't know if I am very clear.
Yes, yes. And then were you and Jeremiah able to connect at all as writing partners? Because both of you
We're on the
wanted,
way.
you're on the way. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never too late, you know, to exchange a draft with someone
Mhm.
else, get
Yeah.
a little bit of feedback. So you guys are in different fields. I don't know. It could work. Jeremiah has his hand up. How do you feel about that? Did you have something to say?
How do I feel about if it could work? Is that what you're asking?
Well, just about life in general, but
Ah, okay. Yeah,
the
that's
writing
what I was
partner
prepared to
thing,
answer.
and then also like how things are going and everything else.
I was prepared to answer the how's the productivity and writing going, and then
Okay.
a little bit with the week 7 highlighting part.
Okay, cool.
So I've been since the last writing retreat in, was it May maybe, where one of the things was let's get in the habit of writing for 15 minutes a day. I've been doing that probably 4 out of 5 work days out of the week
Cool.
on average, and that's been really good
Okay.
for me. I was struggling on a number of aspects of the writing part. So putting time into my day to write has been very valuable. Like just saying I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as disciplined with writing daily until on the early phases, until I started making it the very first thing that I did my day. Before I check email, before I check news, it was on a suggestion you'd made, Sarah, a number of times in your writing. And that I found to be exceptionally valuable for me to get writing done. It's like for me a spin up of mental calisthenics to get going for the day, almost like when I get up and do an early hike in the morning, which gets my day started on another aspect. This is a similar kind of a thing. So that's been super helpful. I was really struggling with the writing part to turn it in from writing of, you know, almost like a clearing of the deck, a clearing of my plate of whatever's spinning on the radar, into thinking about it turning into something that's useful for a dissertation. I was writing a fair bit, you know, 400 to 500 words in 15 minutes, and then up to like 900 words. So I was feeling like, wow, I'm actually getting a lot more written now. But it seems like 30%, 20% less is stuff that I would be able to use in a dissertation. So in working with the graduate writing support, the person that I have, what she had suggested was try to split your time. If you've got 15 minutes, split that. Do 5 or 10 minutes of sort of free association writing, just clearing your plate, and then try to spend some set amount of time with focused. And this idea of parking on a downhill slope. So what I started doing is I log it in my own spreadsheet, what it is I want to write about for the day. And I usually do that the day before. What is it I want to write about tomorrow? And then I just look at that as the first thing. Okay, that's right. That's what I want to write about. But now I'm going to start my free association writing. I've actually increased my writing time to 20 minutes now. And actually I find myself running over by like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes to get things in place. But what I've noticed is she suggested just write fast, get over your internal monitor, which for me is like, if I misspell something, I've got to go back and correct it. If I realize that my sentence could be more grammatically correct or more targeted, more punchy, then I'll go back and revise it as I'm going through it. So when I'm done with a paragraph, it's in reasonably good shape. Of course, there's always going to be edits, but that's a long, tedious, hard process for me. And the idea of writing fast has been super helpful. So I just get it down. I see that it's spelled wrong. I know that when I write it, it's grammatically incorrect for a sentence, but I move on. And getting over that internal limitation has been really helpful for me for writing. So I'm getting essentially now 10 minutes of free writing time that sometimes is useful for dissertation, but is I found to be quite useful just in terms of what am I thinking about and reflection on things. And it's almost as if I'm stretching my mind muscles. And then the second 10 minutes is really focused. And I'm getting, in those 10 minutes, I'm getting 400 to 600 words now of pretty decent dissertation writing stuff.
So that's more like analysis of your main argument, things like that.
Sometimes it's writing if I'm running a model, what did I do to construct the model? What variables did I construct? Those kind of things. So sometimes it's that, it's just descriptive. Other times it's analysis or interpretation of the results. It just kind of depends on what I'm focused on for the week. So that's been super helpful. That's a long way to answer that question of how's the productivity and stuff going, but that's
so helpful to hear for myself and hopefully for everyone else too, of what's been working.
That's been working. It's been great. I think for 5 or 6 days now, I've been on the 20 minutes, increasing to the 20. So the thing we talk about
inspiring me
is right.
Maybe I'll start doing 20 minutes too.
Is frequency. Just do it. Make it a pattern, make it a repetition, make it a habit, and then increase to the duration of it. So I went from 15 to 20, and I'm actually getting a little more than that now. And then I'll work on the intensity. So frequency, duration, and intensity. Those are the 3 things I'm focusing on with writing.
So intensity would be like speed, or would it be level of like analysis being like higher level thinking?
Yes, both. It could be both of those.
Okay.
But for me, the thinking on it is that it's like I'm even more focused on it. So rather than spinning in free form writing and then turning attention, it might be, don't do 10 minutes, do a free form, do 5 minutes of free form and 15 minutes of really focused writing. So that I still think it's important for me to kind of clear the deck, but so that's been helpful.
I like that a lot. I'm inspired, actually.
That writing fast has been really good for me to get over that internal monitor. Okay, so now week 7. As a couple others have noted, being a little behind or a different place, a little asynchronous with what we're at in the workshop here. I do have a nearly completed manuscript that's ready to go, and it's had some feedback from my committee chair, which I'm just now starting to incorporate. So I do feel like I've got something that I'm working on, and every week I do a little bit with it. Last week, I only did 1 paragraph's worth, maybe. I pulled something from the discussion, and I did the highlighting of it. And I noticed that I had 1 line of evidence, and I don't remember how many, like 6 lines of analysis. But in that, and I thought, well, maybe that's too much. Maybe I need to think about what that looks like for the entire discussion section. So I'm a little behind on doing for the entire section. That's part of my afternoon today, is to do that. But
it takes a long time, actually, to go through all of it.
It wouldn't surprise me. That 1 paragraph I did took me probably an hour after our workshop last week to go through that, to think about it. Because what I noticed in it was that I'd waffle. Is this analysis or is this evidence? And if I'm citing somebody else, then I basically landed on that's evidence. I'm not interpreting their evidence. Sometimes I am, maybe.
If you're interpreting what they're saying, then that's analysis.
Then that's analysis and not evidence.
But if you're just summarizing what they're saying, then that's
presenting evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed that as being an interesting piece of it. So while I had like a 6-to-1 ratio of evidence and analysis, some of it was other, like pointing to other people's stuff as a way to tie in my own.
That's a great way. I mean, that's a great way to do it, is to point to other people. And just remember the point of that exercise is exactly what you're doing. Like the whole point of the exercise is just to be aware, just to get you thinking about it. Like no one's actually going to like, be checking, is this green or blue, right? Because that's not the point. The point is just to get you to really look carefully at your own work.
Yeah, it was a valuable exercise, and I can see how valuable it will be for me to do this for the whole paper. And for me, that's an important motivator. If I don't see the why behind it, then I'm very unlikely to do the thing.
Yeah.
I have to. I'm a questioner. Why should I do this? Okay, so that's a long answer to your two questions that you had. We've got 10 minutes left, and we haven't covered everybody yet.
Oh, that's okay. I so appreciate that. And hopefully everyone can get something out of that too, in terms of if they haven't done the blue and green highlight exercise yet, maybe getting some encouragement to do it, even if it's just for a couple of paragraphs. Like you just did it for one paragraph so far, but even if it's just for a couple of paragraphs, it can be really helpful. It's just eye-opening to be like, oh yeah, this is all description, or oh yeah, this is all analysis, and just being mindful of it. Like that's the whole point, is just to be mindful of it and to be aware of it. And
Sarah, so I had a question. How do you overcome imposter syndrome as a graduate student? Like regardless of, even if I get hundreds of best paper awards, I'd be like, am I good enough to be a PhD student? That fear is always there.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, can we pin that question? I want to make sure Joe, did you want to add anything? Because you had that question, but I wanted to check in with you how things went last week.
Yeah,
in terms
sure.
of life, and then also in terms of like the exercise, and if you were able to do it, and if so, was it helpful?
Okay. Yeah, the things are entangled as things are. And I guess like while Jeremiah was talking, I had a couple of ideas about my own writing, because I have like my own sense of time, which is different. Like my parents said it was like Joey time, like an hour, like for a 15-minute task. So to do 15 minutes of writing, it takes me about an hour, I would say.
Yeah, that's pretty normal too.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, so I'll stop being hard on myself about Joey.
Yeah, don't be hard on yourself.
Yeah.
But it takes you about an hour, and that's because
I have like some, I have my brain works differently. So I spend like maybe 30 minutes doing free association, and then about 15 minutes of actual focused writing, during which it's not that I'm self-critiquing, but I'm like correcting as I'm going, and I think just leaving the errors there and being okay with it is really the way to go. And yeah, I mean, my committee's always saying like, go deeper, do an even closer reading and dive down instead of breadth. But I had two really good breakthroughs, or a few. So I rented this office to kind of, which I mentioned during our chat the other day, but like to kind of offload my RA work for the summer and my writing to there. And I've been doing some writing at home, which is a mixture of by hand and on the computer, because like spatializing things is very important to me. Because I'm an artist, I was trained as an artist, and I'm writing about artists who are deeply engaged in a conversation with architecture. So I'm making a case for why spatiality is important. But this week I got the rest of the films from the artist I'm writing about. So her partner and archivist sent me all of the films and a bunch of new articles.
Nice.
Yeah, so that was the big holdup. Yeah, for me. Then they asked me, because the way I wrote the email, they're like, it says you're writing about 3 artists, but are you only writing about Renee, which is the name of the artist? And then I haven't answered them. I have to write them today, actually. But I spoke to my committee chair, and I had 3 requests, and he said yes to all of them. I don't know if they just rolled over or if I have good ideas now or what, but up until prospectus defense, it was like, you got to no to everything almost. And then now they've kind of like put trust, and they're just like, just keep writing.
That sounds familiar.
So I don't know if it's like some kind of watershed. So I was having a hard time writing because I did about 6,000 words of just analysis, but it's not super focused. And now that I've watched some of the more recent films, which I hadn't seen all of them, I have a sense of like where her trajectory is going, because the work I'm writing about close reading now is very early. It's from 96. And like her most canonical works are from between 92 to 96, that kind of are, you know, if you pick up an art history book and you flip open to certain sections, that's the work they're going to talk about, as opposed to her more recent work. So yeah, so we restructured it, or I restructured it, and you know, with the permission of my chair, to be completely about Renee's work, and then letting the other filmmakers come into conversation with her to show how she was influenced by Haroon Farouki, the other filmmaker I was going to write about, and his approaches to montage, or, you know, editing essentially. And then in the third chapter, I'm going to talk about the influence of Renee's work on another artist who was also in dialogue with Farouki as well, a German artist, since Farouki and Hito Steil are both German. So I was just, because the way they wanted me to do it before, it was like I wrote about these filmmakers, and then the fourth one was about me, and I'm like, I'm not like the conclusion of this at all. Like I just am interested in the work, and I have a weird way of thinking, and I know Renee and I love her work, and I've thought about her approaches to filmmaking and to installation. So we separated that chapter off to its own kind of subchapter, where I'm just reflecting on the practice of being an artist curator and a filmmaker.
Okay, good.
Instead of me being some sort of conclusion, I'm like,
yeah,
you know, that is
so that's
not
like
what I
kind of like
do.
a methods section almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. I mean, method is mixed in throughout the whole thing, because all the filmmakers I'm writing about have a practice of being theorists and filmmakers and curators, like all of them. So I'm writing about the whole practice of that. I'm writing about practices. My department is different from art history, because it's like film and film practices, like writing about the practice of artists and filmmakers, and you know, different technologists or theorists, as opposed to just discourse objects which are created through the texts or something. You're looking at the text, but also the person and how they're in dialogue, and so it's focused on practice. And then I told him, I said, I'm going to write about my practice and this they had pushed back against, because they're like, you're a filmmaker, just do that. And finally I was saying, I want to write about the practice of talking to Renee in the interviews, and going into archives and talking to curators. Like the whole thing is my practice. It's not that I'm just a filmmaker. I'm all of these four things or three things. So they, I mean, it was good. It's surprising, but good to get, you know, three kind of, yes, that's a good direction. Here's how to frame it. Yes, that sounds smart. Or yeah. So yeah, that was really, it was really productive in that way. But did I get a lot of writing done every day? Certainly not. I did the week 7 exercise, and what I had written so far was it would just go like long block quote, 1 sentence of analysis. And that 6,000 words, once you unpack that becomes at least 12,000, because it has no analysis. It's almost like some sort of thing you put in water that expands overnight. Like as you're writing it like unfolds, and then it turns into this big thing.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
It's truncated at first. Yeah, like almost staccato. Like, here's a quote. Here's what I'm going to say, or the question I'm going to answer. Next quote. So it's almost like poetic in the way it is now. I think Sarah had a lot of fun reading my thing, because hers is very like tight and like well put together and sociological, and mine is like poetry, or like you didn't finish the sentence, then you just went on to like etymology for 2 pages or something, you know. So she thought it was kind of fun and poetic, and I said, well, it's not really going to look like that in the end. It's just that's the first step of my process.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you were able to kind of look at that and watch it unfold and exchange with Sarah in that way. Okay, well, it's 1:00, so if you have to jump off, no worries. I am going to answer Ajay's question. So how do you overcome imposter syndrome? So that's a great question. Actually, I think my boss did a webinar on that. So, I'm not sure if we recorded it actually. Sorry. Imposter syndrome. It's wild. Yeah, so I think, oh man, that actually is a really hard question. Hold on a second. I want to see if I have, yeah. All right. So I did talk. So I'm going to send you a URL with some more resources that you can check out. But in the meantime, I guess I can just share my own experience, which is that I think imposter syndrome is really common, and it can really, at least for me, it definitely was a voice inside my head that was telling me, like, your work is not valuable and what you have to say is not valuable. And so what that meant was that I had a hard time getting motivated to write anything. So there was a moment when I realized that it was valuable. And I can't really tell you how I got there. It wasn't until after I graduated and I had my PhD in hand. I can tell you that. It was, I think it was when I started doing more advocacy work. So I started engaging more with the community and more with the public, more with some political advocacy work. And then I was feeling like, okay, this is useful. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about changing the narrative of your monkey mind. I think on the one hand, there's like something to be said for silencing the monkey mind. I'm saying this partially because I know you meditate, and I'm sure it's
exactly.
amateur way of understanding it, but that's how I
The thing is,
understand it.
through self-awareness, I've realized that like every time I see it, I'm like, oh, okay, there's that aspect of me that tells me that I'm not good enough. So like, yeah, the more and more you meditate, the more and more you realize these aspects about yourself, and eventually I've realized that they are directly linked to your self-esteem issues. So inherently, most of us, we have self-esteem issues at some level. We never feel good enough about what we do and what we create. So yeah, it's just like becoming more and more self-aware, and then that's one
Exactly.
aspect. But yeah, I wanted to know your experiences and how you dealt with them.
Yeah. And it comes and goes, I have to admit. And I think it's about cultivating that inherent sense of value. And I love Joe. Joe is adding some things to the chat. Do you see that, Ajay?
Yeah,
And
journaling
Mary
about
too.
it.
Let's see.
So many setting high expectations can put instead. What helped me was to ask myself, does my work further, at least one step forward.
Yeah, I like that, Mary. I love that. Yeah, it's just like, is this one step forward? It is so hard though. I think maybe another thing that helped me was just trying to also be a little selfish in some ways, in the sense that I was just trying to, okay, do I get joy out of this? If I get joy out of this, then it's worth it. Is someone going to read my paper? Maybe, maybe not. Like, I can't control that outcome. but at least I can find some joy in the process. So I think that's what I love about this boot camp, is that it's kind of teaching you to just enjoy the process. And at least that's kind of what I want to convey, is like, this is so much more about the process than about any kind of outcome, because we don't know if we do get published, how many citations we're going to get. And it's just, but to kind of enjoy this process of getting together every week, seeing each other, talking, exchanging our writing with other people, talking about our ideas with other people, and just kind of finding joy in that. Ultimately, I think that's more important than some sort of external validation that like might never come. So yeah, I think in terms of imposter syndrome, like trying to seek, like if I was trying to seek like someone else's approval, like it, no matter what people said, I was never happy. But it wasn't until like the voice inside my head started like changing, and I just started being like, you know what, I'm happy with like just doing my yoga and like publishing a few articles a year, like, and trying to kind of detach from any other kind of outcome. And so that's why I encourage all of you to like think about what you want for your life. And it might be academia, it might not be, but either way, it's good. Oh, Joe said something. Sorry, I want to read it. Yeah, that's such good advice, Joe. Thank you for that. I'm gonna remember
It's a
that.
weird time, you know, like
It is such a weird time.
I can only
This
imagine.
pandemic.
There's just a lot of stuff going on right now, and so I think like honoring that exhaustion or stress or I don't know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I I don't know what I'm gonna do tomorrow actually. I was thinking about taking tomorrow off, but now I'm feeling inspired. Maybe I'll do some writing tomorrow. So yeah, just like, yeah, taking some time to listen to your friends, and that was really good advice. So I'll check that article out too, Joe. Does anyone else have any other advice? It's a tough question.
Like, I think it's just important to like focus on everyday life, you know, and not just like to achieve something like the goal, just like focus on the process, you know, and just enjoying every day.
Yeah, like we live in such a beautiful place, and it's like honoring your want to just take a nap, and then also honoring the mountains and like being able to appreciate the mountains as well, I think can be helpful.
Yeah, bringing ourselves to the present moment.
Right, exactly. It can be hard. It's easier said than done sometimes, but yeah, whatever it can be. Like I said, even if it is like, hey, I need to take a nap, you know, and like appreciating that too. All right. Well, thank you for being
Thank
here
you.
today.
Thank you.
We'll meet again next week. We'll talk more. We've got
Sure.
more stuff to work on. Next week is structure, so we'll do some more work. I'll send out the PowerPoint today and the PDF for next week. But just take it slow, be kind to yourself.
Thank you. See y'all later.
Hi,
See ya.
Joe.